That's a cat. Greetings. I am so glad to join you all today. I'm an author on the Common Access Token, and the Common Access Token has been published. It is out and it is available to be used. But before I explain how it works, let's talk about what kind of problems it can solve for you. Then we're going to talk about how it's formed, how you convey it, and we'll get into details about the mechanics it can support. I'm going to go pretty quick. I did have to draw all of the art myself. You're welcome, or I'm sorry, one of the two. I'm going to go, I do have some notes here because there's a lot to get through, and I want to make sure we do. So let's take a fairly common arrangement. I'm a mouse pirate, and I want to stream the Fresh Cheese channel. So it's a live channel, so I snagged the URI from the manifest from a legitimate subscriber. There's a lot of different ways to get this. If the video isn't secured, I just give it to my mouse friends, and it's done. They can just watch it. It's fine. I'm sure you're familiar with this workflow. You've seen it repeatedly. There's a lot of variations. And a bunch of different ways to modify it so I don't get caught. But let's break down the key components. So first, we have to get the URI. There's a lot of ways to get the URI. You can get it from a legitimate subscriber, insider threat, a bunch of options. But at the end of the day, you have to give the URI to the people who are watching your video. So you kind of have to assume that this thing is public information as far as your threat model goes. Then, he's got to give it to his mouse friends. This is obvious, but it's worth noting that the URI is small and the content is big. So if we can somehow prevent him from only sharing the URI and having to redistribute the content, then we can impose costs on Captain Squeaker here. We can make it more expensive because he may be all in on sharing with his mouse friends, but as soon as it starts costing him some of his ill-gotten booty, he may start rethinking some of his choices. And then the mouse friends have to be able to play the content, right? DRM is a fantastic tool. You should use it when it's appropriate, but that's not the tool we're talking about here today. What we need to figure out is how to stop Captain Squeaker from effectively sharing his URIs. If we want to stop a mouse pirate, we use a cat. The Common Access Token. Common Access Token is a specification from the Consumer Technology Association Web Application Video Ecosystem and the Streaming Media Technology Alliance, SVT, or Streaming Video Technology Alliance. There we go, SVTA. We got together and we said there are too many token formats in this world, and so what we need is another token format. I didn't even have to put the XKCD up here. Y'all have seen this one. So we looked and we tried to figure out what they all had in common. And it turns out there are a lot of different ways to create a token. Some of them go in the query string, some of them go in the path, some of them go in the headers. And in the URI, how they're formed varies wildly. Some are just a path segment, some are a path parameter, and some have multiple arguments and some are just one. And then of course you've got variation in how they're encoded. Some are hex, base 64, some are just flat. And then there are different cryptographic algorithms and a lot of variation there. And they're also all over the map when it comes to what they support and what they will secure. They all basically secure the URI and have some sort of an expiration time. But whether they support IP addresses or geographic limitations or whatnot, that all varies a lot. So we created something that is a lot more standard and consistent and extensible. We built it on CBOR, on which is built Cozy, on which is built the CBOR web token. I pronounce that coot. You will hear other people pronounce it cot. They can go in the path. They can go in the query. They can go in cookies. They can go in the authorization header. They can go in HTTP headers. We built them with compatibility for OAuth. They are a valid OAuth bearer token. We built them compatibility with Depop, which is for OAuth. Here's what a CWT might look like. It's ugly, but it's there. You can't read that. This is much better. This is what the base 64D code looks like. You're not gonna ever work with this. Your library is gonna encode this. But here are the parts. You've got the protected header. You've got the unprotected header. You have the body. That's where the interesting stuff goes. And of course, the signature. The protected header has the information required in order to decode the token. There we go. And the body has all of the claims that you are going to have to work with. It's by far the most interesting part, and it is the part we're going to spend the most time talking about here. Here's what, and then of course, here's signature or the MAC that goes at the end. Signatures are asymmetric, and the MACs are symmetric. They have different properties. Read the paper for details. It matters. There's another option, though. They can be encrypted. Encrypted works similarly to a signature or a MAC, except that the bearer cannot read the contents of the token. So let's get into the claims, breaking down. This is the version claim. It's not very interesting. There's only one version. You don't need to include this. Parties claim. The issuer is the content provider. The audience claim is the CDN that is going to process it. And the subject claim is the client. Be careful with the subject. This usually identifies a person or a household, and you may have obligations there. So, if you have a subject claim, you usually need to encrypt the token. Time claims. The expiration claim tells you after which point the token is no longer valid. The NBF tells you before the point at which it's no longer valid. The EAT claim, the issued at claim, tells you when it was issued. This is informational only, and you will, if you meant to say that it wasn't valid before a time, you would use NBF. Now, there are reuse claims. These claims, the first claim is the CTI claim. This is a handle for the token. If you're going to do any kind of invalidation of the token at all, you have to have this token, this handle. We don't tell you how to do invalidation, but if you want to do it, this is the piece you need. Cat replay, that tells you if the token is allowed to be replayed. By default, it is. This allows you to limit that. Cat poor claim is an interesting claim because it is simple probability. It allows you to identify a probability of rejection. Every time the token is presented, the CDN rolls the dice, and if it comes up snake eyes, it not only rejects the token, but it revokes the token entirely. If Captain Squeaker watches the Fresh Cheese channel by himself, then he has a very tiny chance of even watching it for a month of it ever being revoked. But if he shares it with 1 million mouse friends, then the token will become revoked almost instantly. And this makes sharing very tedious. It's very low context as well. In any case, tokens that use revocation are going to need to make sure that they have a way for legitimate clients to get a quick way to get a acceptable token, most preferably automatically. We'll talk about some options for that in a little bit, but next we have what the token actually allows access to. These are the HTTP claims. The CAT-U claim limits the URI. CAT-M is the method, and the CAT-H is the header. For both of those first two, though, they take a match object. This example, you can see, matches a path that has a prefix of foo. All the various parts of the URI can be matched against, and there's a bunch of different parts that you can, pieces that you can match. Those including regex. Note that regex is an ERE, a POSIX ERE, which means it is regex directed, or text directed, not regex directed, and immune from backtracking, catastrophic backtracking. Now, TLS claims. There's a pair of TLS-related claims. That first one is very straightforward. CAT LPN. It matches a TLS connection that matches that ALPN. Now, CAT TPK is very interesting because that lets you bind to the TLS public key of the connection. So, let me explain how that works. If you have the client uses a self-signed certificate for the connection to your site. When they log in and they get their URI, that URI is signed for them and it contains the public key of their client cert. Later, they use the same self-signed cert on the TLS connection to the CDN, and the CDN knows that it's the same client that was originally authorized. If their client is the infamous squeaker, they might share their public and private keys for the with all their mouse friends. Now, if they do that, then their mouse friends will in fact be able to watch the content, and this is a bit of a problem. So this isn't by itself an anti-sharing claim. This is an anti-theft claim alone. The exception, of course, is if you can lock the private key in a hardware enclosure that is very difficult for him to share. That will turn it into a very powerful anti-sharing claim, because then, when they try to use it, they won't have the private key, and they won't be able to redeem the token. Turns it into an extremely powerful anti-sharing claim. A related claim that provides the exact same protection is the DPoP confirmation claim. It works exactly the same way, except instead of the TLS connection, to provide the proof of connection, proof of possession, you add a proof of a header on every request. Now, catnip. This is the IP address claim. It binds the token to a particular address. This comes with a lot of caveats, though. IP addresses change a lot more than you think they do, and it's a lot less useful than people want it to be. However, it is in fact still useful, and so it's there. You can use broader groups like IP prefixes and ASNs, and if you use a broad enough one, then you don't have to encrypt it. Geographic claims. The CAT also supports a variety of location-based claims. These also mostly need to be encrypted for privacy. And they are. CAT Geo ISO 3166. This is what it says on the tin. It limits to a specific country and subregion. CAT Geocord, specific circle and a GPS location. CAT GeoHash are variably quantized, and for non-moving clients provide quite a bit of anonymity provided they are large enough. If you use them, you may not need to encrypt the token. See the spec for details. GeoAlt, that's the altitude. Good luck with that. Finally, there are a couple of claims that are just special handling by the CDN. Both of these can be used to try to keep a token fresh. First one is the CAT-R claim, which is the renewal claim. This can be used to renew a token before it expires as long as you keep it active. It has information on how and when to send it back to the client. This allows the client to stay active, but sometimes the token will expire before it can be renewed. That's when the CAT-IF claim comes into place. This is a fairly complex claim, but the core is instead of sending back a 403 forbidden, you can send back something else and some headers. The most useful use of this is with redirection. This is what it looks like. It's not tiny, but it's not huge either. That's all the claims in the Common Access Token. But that's not all the claims that you can use, because there are 3 claims before the ITF in a draft. That is the and, or, and nor claims. These are binary logic claims, and they are all structured the same. If you have an or claim, you start executing each of its claim sets, and if one of them is valid, then then the or claim itself is valid. And there's another one. There's another specification that interoperates perfectly with the Common Access Token, and that's the -IF watermarking specification. Watermarking token uses a CWT. You can use all the same claims in the same token. The details of how watermarking work are outside the scope of this already fast presentation, but you should definitely go read and investigate that, because watermarking is a powerful tool for figuring out precisely where your content is leaking from, even if Captain Squeakers redistributes the content of himself. Combined with real-time monitoring surveillance of the squeaker net, you can create robust protection for your high-value live events. Add all of these tools together, and you have a flexible envelope for precisely the claims that are useful for your use case. CDNs only have to implement the claims once, and the definitions are sufficiently precise that if a token is acceptable on one CDN, it will be acceptable on all of the other CDNs. The more aspects of the request you bind the token to, the better off you are, the harder it's going to be for Captain Squeaker to share his token. No single claim is 100% foolproof, but taken together in the presence of all of the other things that you are already doing to secure your content, you can delay, deter, and impose costs on the would-be pirates. Now, I am certain you have questions.
Thank you, Chris.
So we have an existing system for restricting useful reception to people that are authorized for it. why would you need to do this or choose to do this in place of a DRM or CA system?
So this is in addition to the DRM or CA system. So this particular token is going to have much shorter lifetimes, and it's much harder to share than those license files that get sent around. Also,
but if a license is tied to a device, you can share whatever you like, and it's not going to do any good.
If your DRM system works 100% of the time, you are correct. Experience has shown me that that is not reality, and that we need a layered approach, Swiss cheese.
Thank you.
So I know CloudFront supports CAT now, but how many other CDNs have been adopting it, and is it now widely adopted across the industry?
I've been asking that question as I walk around, and I can tell you the answer is at least Fastly and Akamai, and more every day.
Hey Chris, thanks for this extraordinary specification. Makes our life super easy. In the perspective of narrowing down the scope of a token and preventing more token sharing, we would be interested in the future to use JA4 fingerprinting as a claim in the token. And I wanted to check with you what is the status of integrating JA4 in the spec, even if it's in the spec.
That is a great question. And the status is there have been some conversations about it. Precisely where that gets published is unclear. There's a couple of different options, but the bottom line is all we have to do is write down the specification and publish it somewhere and register the key. And because we're using a COOT, we could just register the IANA token, and you'll have all the interop that you need.
Right, sounds like there is some hope.
And some work.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.